On the morning of her wedding, Sarah Mitchell became the most talked about woman in Chicago. Friends couldn't understand why a brilliant young nurse with a promising future had chosen to marry Daniel Carter, the quiet hospital janitor. Some whispered that she had settled for a man with no ambition. Others laughed that she would spend the rest of her life struggling while her classmates married successful doctors and wealthy businessmen. But Sarah never cared about expensive cars or designer suits. She fell in love with Daniel because of the way he treated people. He respected every patient, greeted every cleaner by name, and never ignored anyone who needed help. To Sarah, kindness was worth more than money. What nobody at that wedding knew was that Daniel had been hiding a secret for months. Every hallway he cleaned, every floor he mopped, and every insult he quietly endured was part of a decision he had made for a reason no one could have imagined. Before the day was over, the same people mocking the hospital janitor would stand in complete silence, staring at the man they thought they knew. And when the hospital's board of directors finally addressed him as, "Sir, every life in that room would change forever," 3 months earlier, Sarah Mitchell had built a reputation as one of the most caring nurses at Carter Memorial Hospital in downtown Chicago. Patients loved her gentle smile, and her colleagues admired her dedication. Every morning before sunrise, she walked through the hospital's bright marble corridors with one goal: to make someone's worst day a little easier. Among the hundreds of employees working inside the hospital, one man always caught her attention. Daniel Carter, the quiet janitor, was unlike anyone she had ever met. While others rushed past frightened patients without a second glance, Daniel always stopped to help. He carried heavy bags for elderly visitors, comforted crying children with kind words, and treated every person, from the wealthiest executive to the newest cleaner, with the same quiet respect. Most employees barely noticed him. Some looked down on him because of his uniform. Others believed a janitor could never amount to anything more. But Sarah saw something different. There was a calm confidence in Daniel that didn't match the simple life everyone assumed he lived. Without realizing it, she was beginning to fall in love with a man whose greatest secret remained hidden from the entire hospital. As the weeks passed, Sarah and Daniel became friends. Every lunch break seemed to bring another conversation, another laugh, another reason to look forward to seeing each other. Daniel never tried to impress Sarah with expensive gifts or promises of a luxurious future. Instead, he listened when she spoke, encouraged her after difficult shifts, and reminded her why she became a nurse in the first place. But not everyone was happy to see their friendship growing. Inside Carter Memorial Hospital, gossip spread faster than any medical report. Nurses whispered behind Sarah's back. Doctors questioned her judgment. Hospital administrators laughed whenever they saw her talking to the quiet janitor. To them, Daniel would always be nothing more than the man who cleaned the floors. They believed Sarah deserved someone with status, wealth, and influence. What none of them realized was that Daniel wasn't bothered by their insults. Every cruel word, every mocking smile, and every disrespectful glance only brought him one step closer to revealing a truth that would change the hospital forever. The gossip inside Carter Memorial Hospital grew louder with every passing day, but Sarah refused to let other people's opinions control her life. She judged people by their actions, not their job titles. The more she observed Daniel, the more convinced she became that he was unlike anyone she had ever met. One rainy evening, after a long shift, Sarah saw Daniel quietly paying for an elderly patient's medication after learning the man couldn't afford it. He didn't ask for recognition. He didn't tell anyone what he had done. He simply smiled, wished the patient a speedy recovery, and walked away before anyone could thank him. That single moment changed everything. Sarah finally understood why she felt so different whenever Daniel was around. It wasn't because he had money or influence. It was because he possessed something far more valuable: integrity. As their bond grew stronger, neither of them realized that powerful eyes inside the hospital had already begun watching Daniel much more closely. The day of truth was getting closer. A few weeks later, Sarah and Daniel's relationship was no longer a secret. The news spread throughout Carter Memorial Hospital almost overnight. Some people admired Sarah's courage, but many believed she had made the biggest mistake of her life. They couldn't understand why a talented nurse would choose a hospital janitor when she could have married a successful doctor or executive. The criticism became impossible to ignore. Friends advised Sarah to end the relationship before it was too late. Hospital administrators quietly warned that dating someone from the maintenance department could damage her professional reputation. Even strangers who barely knew Daniel felt entitled to judge him because of the uniform he wore every day. But Sarah had already made her decision. She had seen Daniel's heart when nobody else was watching. She had witnessed his kindness, his humility, and his quiet strength. One evening, after another exhausting shift, Daniel asked Sarah to meet him somewhere special. She had no idea that before the night ended, her life would change forever. And a simple question would begin a chain of events that would shake the entire hospital. Sarah accepted Daniel's proposal without a moment of hesitation. She wasn't saying yes to a job title or a bank account. She was saying yes to the man who had shown her genuine kindness when nobody was watching. Within hours, their engagement became the biggest topic inside Carter Memorial Hospital. Doctors discussed it during meetings. Nurses whispered about it in the hallways. Even patients had begun hearing the story of the nurse who had chosen to marry the hospital janitor. Some admired Sarah's courage, but many believed she was making the biggest mistake of her life. Daniel never tried to change anyone's opinion. He continued arriving before sunrise, cleaning the hospital with the same quiet dedication, and treating every patient with respect. Yet behind the scenes, strange things began happening. Expensive black vehicles occasionally appeared outside the hospital. Daniel received confidential phone calls that he always answered in private. Sarah noticed these unusual moments, but chose not to question the man she trusted completely. She believed every answer would come in its own time. She had no idea that their wedding day was only a few days away, and that it would change both their lives forever. The wedding day arrived under a clear Chicago sky. Friends, family members, doctors, nurses, and hospital executives gathered to witness what many believed would be Sarah Mitchell's greatest mistake. As she walked down the aisle, whispers spread through the church. Some guests admired her courage, while others questioned why a talented nurse would choose a hospital janitor over someone with wealth and influence. Daniel remained calm throughout the ceremony. He ignored every judgmental glance and every whispered comment. His attention never left Sarah. To him, this day wasn't about proving anyone wrong. It was about marrying the woman who believed in him long before she knew the truth. As the ceremony came to an end, applause filled the church. The newly married couple smiled as they greeted family and friends. Just as they prepared to leave for their wedding reception, Daniel's phone rang. He looked at the screen, paused for a moment, and quietly answered. After a brief conversation, he turned towards Sarah with a gentle smile. "There's somewhere we need to go first," he said. Sarah had no idea that those few words were about to change their lives forever. Instead of driving to their wedding reception, Daniel asked the driver to take them to Carter Memorial Hospital. Sarah was confused, but trusted him without asking questions. When they arrived, something immediately felt different. The hospital entrance was unusually quiet. Security officers stood at attention. Senior executives waited near the elevators as if they were expecting someone important. As Daniel and Sarah stepped onto the executive floor, every conversation suddenly stopped. Board members, department directors, and hospital executives straightened their jackets and quietly stood to their feet. Sarah looked around, assuming an important investor was about to arrive. Then the chairman smiled, walked directly toward Daniel, and extended his hand. "Welcome back, Mr. Carter," he said respectfully. Sarah froze. Emily Brooks couldn't believe what she was seeing. The same man everyone had called the janitor was being welcomed like the most important person in the entire hospital. At that moment, Sarah realized the biggest secret of Daniel's life had finally been revealed. Silence filled the boardroom. Moments earlier, Daniel Carter had been known as the hospital janitor. Now, every executive in the room stood before him with respect. Sarah struggled to process everything she had just witnessed. The man she had fallen in love with had never lied to her about who he was. He had simply chosen to live without the privilege that came with his name. Daniel slowly looked around the room before speaking. He explained that after inheriting Carter Memorial Hospital from his late father, he refused to lead from a luxury office without first understanding the daily struggles of every employee. For months, he had worked as a janitor to experience the hospital through the eyes of those who were often ignored. He wanted to discover who treated people with kindness when they believed no reward would ever come. His experiment had revealed more than he expected. He witnessed compassion from cleaners, receptionists, nurses, and patients. He also witnessed arrogance, disrespect, and abuse of authority from people who believed a uniform determined a person's worth. Looking directly at Sarah, Daniel smiled with gratitude. She had never loved him because of his position. She loved the man behind the uniform. At that moment, Daniel announced that Sarah would help him lead a new chapter for Carter Memorial Hospital, a chapter built on compassion, humility, and respect. Those who had mocked others were held accountable. Those who had served with integrity were rewarded. As Daniel and Sarah walked out of the hospital hand in hand, they left behind more than a shocking secret. They reminded everyone that true greatness is never measured by the clothes you wear or the title you carry. It is measured by the way you treat people when no one is watching.